Hey guys, tonight let's start with a story. A parasite that feeds on human memories, building its hive and haunting those involved and even their descendants. In the end, 3 affected veterans sacrificed their own memories to dismantle its structure in their dreams. Yet its threat still lurks within humanity's longing to forget. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see people joining us from all over the world. Berlin, late autumn 1944. The air was thick with a mixture of smoke and burnt smell, like a dirty rag soaked in kerosene, smothering everyone's nose and mouth tightly. Allied bomber squadrons had just streaked across the city sky, their engine roar still echoing faintly deep in the clouds, while ground explosions continued to relay one after another, tearing the once neat streets to shreds. More than half of the transport station's iron roof had been blown off, exposing rusted steel beams twisted into grotesque shapes under the gloomy sky. Scattered wooden crates and broken sleepers lay mixed together, covered by flying debris, and occasional unextinguished sparks flickered in the gaps of the ruins, illuminating the mess. Hans Schultz gripped his rifle tightly, huddled behind a broken concrete wall, his eardrums buzzing with lingering shock from the recent air raid. As the transport station's quartermaster, he didn't need to be on the front lines moving supplies. But this batch of mailbags marked Top Secret Silver Project was too special. His superiors had specifically instructed that he must supervise the transfer personally. At this moment, the wound on his forehead was still oozing blood, mixing with dust to streak dark red across his cheek. Yet his gaze remained fixed on the batch of specially lead-clad mailbags not far away. 3 in total, square and heavy, with black SS insignia and encrypted serial numbers printed on their surfaces. "Sir, take cover. There's still aftershocks." A young soldier's shout cut through the tinnitus. Before Hans could react, a powerful blast of air suddenly hit him from the rear, like an invisible giant hand slamming him to the ground. He crashed heavily against the base of the wall, his vision going black as he lost control of his body instantly. In the chaos, he felt the surrounding air twist, and dust and debris seemed to be pressed into slow motion, floating gently in the air. It was then that he caught sight of the bizarre scene. One of the silver mailbags, caught in the blast, didn't get blown away or smashed like the other supplies. Instead, it gradually became transparent and blurry, its edges fading into the air as if erased by an eraser. No sound, no change in light and shadow, just vanished without a trace, as if it had never existed. Seconds later, Hans finally recovered from the impact, coughing violently as he struggled to his feet. His first instinct was to look at the spot where the mailbag had disappeared, but there was only empty ground scattered with a few pieces of debris, nothing else. "Did you see that?" He turned to the 3 soldiers beside him, who had just climbed up, their faces equally dazed and shaken. "See what, sir?" One soldier rubbed his shoulder, his brows furrowed. "That mailbag, the silver one, top secret." Hans's voice trembled slightly. "It just disappeared, like it was erased." The 3 soldiers exchanged glances, their confusion deepening. "Sir, weren't we moving something just now?" One asked hesitantly, his tone full of perplexity. "I can't seem to remember. What were we carrying before the air raid?" "Yeah, me neither," another soldier echoed. "It's like a blank spot in my mind. Something that just happened feels like it was ages ago. All blurry." Hans's heart sank. He remembered clearly that they had been transferring that special batch of mailbags, but these 3 soldiers had completely forgotten. Suppressing his unease, he hurried to the supply list, picked up a pen, and recorded the transfer as required. The pen scratched across the paper, leaving the words "silver mail bags transferred." But the moment he wrote it, a strong sense of unease washed over him. Hesitating for a moment, He added a small question mark at the end. The ink bled slightly on the paper, like an uncertain sigh. Wind poured in through the damaged roof, carrying a bitter chill that fluttered the edges of the list. Hans looked up at the sky, covered in dark clouds with not a ray of sunlight visible, as if the entire Berlin was shrouded in this gloom. He had no idea where the vanished mailbag had gone, nor what the soldier's amnesia meant. He only felt that something had quietly deviated from its intended course with the disappearance of that silver mailbag. Munich, 1972. Autumn was in full bloom. The leaves of the linden trees lining the streets had turned varying shades of golden yellow, rustling down to cover the stone pavement, making a soft crunch when stepped on. St. Anna Nursing Home was located in a quiet area on the edge of the city, its red brick walls covered with withered vines. The lawn in the courtyard had turned yellow, and the branches of several old oak trees were sparse, casting dappled shadows in the sunlight. When Ella Baumann pushed open the door to room 307, sunlight streamed through the window onto the floor, forming a warm patch of light. The room was quiet, except for the ticking of the clock on the bedside table. Former Quartermaster Hans Schultz lay on the hospital bed, no longer breathing, his face wearing a peaceful serenity as if he were merely asleep. Ella sighed softly. As the nurse in charge of Hans's care, she knew the old man had not had a happy later life. He would often sit alone by the window, his eyes vacant, occasionally sketching something unconsciously on paper, yet when asked, he would say he couldn't remember anything. Following the nursing home's regulations, Ella began sorting through Hans's belongings. The old man had few things: an old leather suitcase containing a few changes of clothes, a well-worn Bible, and some scattered photographs. When she lifted the mattress to check for any forgotten items, her fingers touched a thick stack of paper. Curious, she pulled it out and found more than 300 sketches, each depicting a door. The sketches were from various angles, some front-facing, some viewed from the side or above, some showing only the outline of the frame, others detailing the texture of the door panel. Yet it was clear to anyone that they all portrayed the same door. Its design was peculiar, not a modern security door, nor a classical wooden one. The door panel had a metallic sheen, with smooth, concise lines that exuded an indescribable eeriness and solemnity. Ella flipped through them one by one, growing more puzzled. Why had this old man drawn so many pictures of the same door? Moreover, the dates on the sketches spanned a long period. The earliest was marked 1945, the latest just the previous week. As Ella stared at the sketches, lost in thought, artist Mark Hoffman, far away in Hamburg, suddenly jolted awake from his sleep. He sat up abruptly, his forehead covered in cold sweat, his heart pounding fiercely in his chest. The sky outside was still dark, and the room was pitch black except for the glowing numbers on the alarm clock, which read 3:17 a.m. A strong urge surged within him. Almost instinctively, Mark fumbled out of bed, walked to his desk, grabbed a paintbrush, dipped it in black paint, and began drawing on the white wall without hesitation. His movements were mechanical yet fluid, as if controlled by some unseen force. His mind filled only with the clear outline of that door, as if it were right in front of him. Minutes later, a door identical to the one in Hans's sketches appeared on the wall, its lines bold and powerful, carrying a repressed emotion. After finishing, Mark gradually came to his senses. Staring at the door on the wall, he felt a mix of confusion and fear. This was the 30th year he had had the same dream, always featuring this strange door. Every year on this date, he would wake up precisely at 3:17 a.m., overcome by an uncontrollable urge to draw it. He had tried to resist this impulse before, but each time he did, he would suffer severe headaches, as if his brain were about to split apart. At the exact same moment, Rainer Koch in the outskirts of Munich and Joachim Mahler in Berlin also jolted awake from their sleep. Rainer rummaged for his wife's lipstick and drew the outline of the door on his bedroom wall. Joachim used a pencil to carefully sketch the familiar yet unfamiliar door on the inside of his desk drawer. After finishing, all three stood motionless, their eyes vacant, filled with inexplicable sorrow and confusion. None of them knew what the door represented, nor why they had been haunted by it for 30 years. While sorting through Hans's belongings, Ella found an old photograph. 4 young soldiers posing together, with a World War II-era transport station in the background. Their names were written on the back: Hans Schultz, Mark Hoffman, Rainer Koch, Joachim Muller. Ella remembered Hans occasionally mentioning his comrades from the war, and she guessed these 4 must have been colleagues. Looking at the young Mark in the photo, Ella suddenly recalled the renowned artist Mark Hoffman. She had seen his exhibition at an art gallery and been deeply impressed. Taking a chance, Ella contacted Mark Hoffman's studio through the art gallery. When she appeared at Mark's door with Hans's sketches and showed him the old photograph, Mark's face turned ashen. He stared at the sketches, then at the photo of himself and Hans, his body trembling uncontrollably. These sketches, did Hans draw them? Mark's voice was hoarse, filled with disbelief. Ella nodded. Yes, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Hans passed away yesterday. I found these while sorting through his things. I thought they were strange, and when I saw you in the photo, I wanted to ask if you knew him. Mark didn't answer. Instead, he turned to the corner of his studio, lifted a canvas, and revealed his latest series, Doors of Dreams. Ella leaned closer and gasped. Mark's paintings were eerily similar to Hans's sketches, matching not only in the door's design but also in the strange atmosphere they emanated. What is this about? Ella asked in astonishment. Mark slowly sat down on a chair, resting his head in his hands, his voice heavy. 30 years, Ms. Ella. For 30 years, Hans, myself, Rainer, and Joachim in that photo have had the same dream every year on this day, dreaming of this door. We all wake up precisely at 3:17 a.m. and feel compelled to draw it. Yet we never spoke of it, as if some subconscious force told us it was a forbidden topic. Ella was stunned. She had never heard of anything so bizarre. For men scattered across different places, having the same dream and drawing the same door for 30 years. It was simply unimaginable. Through Mark's contacts, Ella and Mark met Rainer Koch. Rainer was retired, his hair gray, his health declining. When he saw Hans's sketches and Mark's paintings, he became extremely emotional. He told them that his son Carl, who had never met Hans nor heard of their past, had started sleepwalking and drawing doors. Carl never knew Hans, never heard about what happened to us back then, Rainer said anxiously. He's only 18. For the past few months, he's been sleepwalking at night, drawing that door on the walls, but he remembers nothing when he wakes up. Later, they tracked down Joachim Muller's family. Joachim had passed away 10 years earlier, and his wife handed Mark a diary. The diary recorded Joachim's dreams about the door. One entry read, "Last night, I finally pushed the door open. Inside the room sat my brother Carl, but he died when he was 2 years old. He smiled at me and said, 'You've finally come to join me.'" Mark and Rainer stared in shock. Joachim had no brother. He was an only child. As their investigation deepened, they uncovered an even more shocking phenomenon. All those affected by the door, including Hans, Mark, Rainer, Joachim, and Rainer's son Carl, had abnormal memory inheritance in their families. Mark's grandson, who had never been told about World War II, could vividly describe battlefield scenes. Rainer's daughter had inherited her mother's unspoken childhood trauma, often crying out in her sleep about fears her mother had never mentioned. Ella's friend Sophia Wolf was a journalist. When she heard Ella's account of these bizarre events, she immediately became fascinated. As a sharp-eyed journalist, she sensed there must be an untold secret behind it all. Determined to investigate, Sophia traveled to the Berlin State Archives to search for records related to the transport station during World War II. Among the dusty archives, Sophia found a supplementary record from 1951 mentioning the silver mailbag that had vanished during the 1944 air raid. Silver mailbag recovered from the original ruins. Exterior intact, interior empty, no signs of corrosion. Seeing this, Sophia's heart skipped a beat. She realized the silver mailbag was likely the key to unlocking all the mysteries. Even more bizarrely, the record noted that 3 of the 5 personnel who had inspected the silver mailbag had committed suicide within a year, and their suicide notes all mentioned voices behind the door. Following this lead, Sophia tracked down the only surviving inspector, a retired psychiatrist named Dr. Keller, who lived in seclusion on the outskirts of Munich. Dr. Keller's residence was simple and secluded, surrounded by dense woods. When Sophia explained her purpose and showed him the archive record, Dr. Keller's expression turned grave. He fell silent for a long time before speaking slowly, his voice hoarse and deep. "Child, you shouldn't have come asking about this. That wasn't a mailbag, it was a cocoon. A cocoon that devours memories." Dr. Keller's words sent a chill down Sophia's spine. Looking at the elderly man with gray hair and clouded eyes, she pressed eagerly for more details. "Dr. Keller, can you explain further? What is a memory-devouring cocoon?" Dr. Keller gestured for Sophia to sit, then got up to pour 2 glasses of warm water, handing one to her. "It's a life form we cannot comprehend, originating from the depths of the universe," he said slowly. "It doesn't consume matter, it consumes connections. First, the information contained in the documents inside the mailbag. Then, the spatial-temporal coordinates of those documents' existence. Finally, the memory anchors of anyone who perceives it. During the 1944 air raid, it didn't disappear. It began consuming all connections related to itself. That's why the soldiers forgot what they were carrying, and why Hans added that question mark to his record. What about the door?" Sophia pressed. "What's the connection between the door and this life form?" "The door is an interface it created in human consciousness." Dr. Keller's eyes turned profound. "It needs energy to sustain itself, and human memories are its source of sustenance. The door is like a feeding hole a parasite bores into its host, used to continuously extract memory energy. Those affected by it all see this door in their minds because their memories are being slowly devoured." Sophia frowned. "But why does this influence pass to future generations? Rainer's son Carl never came into contact with that silver mailbag. Why is he affected?" "This isn't simple heredity." Dr. Keller shook his head. "It modifies epigenetic markers, encoding its own hunger into the host's DNA. This way, the host's descendants become potential new hosts, allowing it to continuously obtain memory energy. Those abnormal memory inheritance phenomena in families are actually the creature selecting and activating new hosts, connecting memories across generations to facilitate its feeding." To prove his hypothesis, Dr. Keller pulled out a thick stack of research materials, including his original diagnostic records of the 5 mailbag inspectors and long-term tracking data on their family members. The documents detailed these individuals' memory deterioration, dream content, and family memory inheritance, with every piece of data supporting his claims. As Sophia read through the materials, she was overwhelmed with shock. She realized this was no mere bizarre incident. It was a great secret related to human memory and survival. Determined to uncover the creature's origins, she returned to the Berlin State Archives to search through more classified World War II documents, this time focusing on the Nazi organization known as the Ahnenerbe. Founded in 1935, the Ahnenerbe was a secret Nazi organization dedicated to archaeological, anthropological, and esoteric research, with the aim of proving the superiority of the Aryan race. Among the declassified files, Sophia discovered a detailed report on a 1938 expedition to Tibet. The report mentioned that the expedition team had found an unnatural cave near Kailash, with walls as smooth as mirrors, as if artificially polished. Suspended in the center of the cave was a silver spindle-shaped object. The expedition leader, Ernst Schaefer, wrote in his notes, "Local monks call this object the Dream Eater, warning us not to take it, claiming it devours human memories and souls. But we believe it is a spiritual weapon left by our Aryan ancestors, one that will help us win the war. So we placed it in a specially made lead box and brought it back to Germany." Scientists accompanying the expedition also recorded a strange phenomenon. Anyone who approached the silver spindle-shaped object would experience memory redundancy, vividly recalling events that had never happened. One team member claimed to remember hunting with his grandfather as a child, even though his grandfather had died before he was born. Another recalled World War II battlefield scenes he had never witnessed. At this point, Sophia finally understood. Inside the silver mailbag had been this silver spindle-shaped object from Tibet, the Dream Eater. The Nazis had mistakenly believed it was a spiritual weapon of the Aryan ancestors. But in reality, it was a cosmic information life form that had existed for thousands of years, sealed in the unique geomagnetic environment of the Tibetan Plateau, unable to harm humans. The Nazi expedition had broken that seal, bringing it back to Germany and triggering this series of bizarre events. As the investigation deepened, Mark's dreams worsened. Previously, he had only dreamed of the door, but now he could push it open and enter the room beyond. The room was dim, filled with a damp, musty smell. What terrified him most was that the room was starting to expand, filled with fragments of other veterans' memories. Wallpaper from Hans's pre-war apartment, the yellow floral pattern Mark had seen in Hans's sketches. A photo of Rainer's first love, the girl in a blue dress smiling sweetly, and the toy of Joachim's imaginary brother, a red tin train. Even more terrifyingly, the rooms behind the door began to leave traces in reality. An unfinished room on Mark's canvas featured brushstrokes identical to Hans's signature the next day, as if Hans's spirit had continued painting on his work. Moisture seeped from the walls of Rainer's house, carrying the smell of old Berlin. Touching it, one could feel the cold dampness, as if behind the wall lay the ruins of Berlin in 1944. In Joachim's former residence, his wife said she often heard a child's laughter and the sound of a tin train rolling at night. All those affected began to experience time distortion. Mark frequently mistook 1977 for 1944, calling his young studio assistant by the name of a World War II comrade. Rainer's son Karl, while sleepwalking and drawing the door, would speak German military terms from World War II, even though he barely spoke German normally. Joachim's grandson could accurately describe the layout of the 1944 Berlin transport station, including the locations of bombed warehouses and railway tracks. Based on these phenomena, Dr. Keller put forward a shocking hypothesis. The parasite was using stolen memory fragments to construct a stable nest at the boundary between reality and dreams. This nest, pieced together from countless broken lives and memories, was a perpetual feeding trough. It intended to trap the consciousness of all affected individuals within this nest, making their memories its eternal source of energy, passed down through generations indefinitely. "If we don't stop it," Dr. Keller said gravely, "it won't be long before this nest becomes increasingly stable, eventually eroding the real world, plunging more people into memory chaos, and turning them into hosts. The consequences will be unimaginable." Sophia, Mark, and Rainer all realized the gravity of the situation. They had to find a way to stop the parasite and destroy the memory nest it had built. But they knew the creature had become deeply bound to their life energy. Breaking free would require a price they might not be able to bear. Dr. Keller looked at Mark, Rainer, and the solemn Sophia, then slowly proposed an astonishing theory. "Perhaps we have misunderstood this parasite all along. It is not malicious. Devouring memories and building nests is simply its way of surviving." "Not malicious?" Rainer retorted angrily. "It made my son sleepwalk, haunted us with nightmares for 30 years, and devours our memories. How is that not malicious? Its logic is different from ours," Dr. Keller explained. It may come from a universe where consciousness is directly interconnected, where all memories are shared, and there is no such thing as private individual memory. So when it came to Earth, it tried to integrate human memories for its own use. It thought it was helping hosts integrate their memories, but in reality it caused the fragmentation of human consciousness. The rooms behind the door, the memory fragments, these are all products of its failed attempt to integrate memories. What about the door? Sophia asked. Is the door also an attempt at communication? Yes, Dr. Keller nodded. The door is not only a feeding hole but also an interface it uses to try to communicate with humans. But it cannot understand the structure of human consciousness, so this communication failed, becoming instead a tool that tears consciousness apart. Those who committed suicide all voluntarily entered the room behind the door in their dreams. Their consciousness was completely consumed by memory fragments, unable to bear the fragmentation, and they ultimately chose death. Sophia thought of Joaquim's diary entry. He had pushed open the door and seen his non-existent brother. Perhaps he had been on the verge of consciousness collapse at the time. As for the inspectors who had committed suicide, they had likely come into direct contact with the parasite, suffering even more severe effects. Mark fell silent for a long time. He looked at the paintbrush in his hand, then thought of the strange doors on his walls. He realized Dr. Keller was right. The parasite had become deeply bound to their life energy. As long as they lived, the door would continue to open for future generations, dooming their descendants to be haunted by nightmares and have their memories devoured, just like them. We can't go on like this. Mark's eyes turned firm. We have to do something to end this. Rainer nodded in agreement. He couldn't bear the thought of his son Carl being tormented by the parasite for the rest of his life. But what can we do? We can't even touch it, let alone destroy it. Perhaps we can dismantle it from the inside. Mark looked out the window, his voice calm yet resolute. That memory nest was built with our memories. If we can enter the nest and use the intense emotions of human memory to impact its structure, we might be able to break it apart, destabilize it, and stop its influence on us. Dr. Keller stared at Mark in astonishment. You want to voluntarily enter the dream nest? It's too dangerous. Once you go in, your consciousness might be trapped there forever, never to return to reality. We have no choice. Mark shook his head. For the sake of our descendants, for the sake of no one else being tormented by this parasite, we have to take the risk. Rainer voiced his agreement. Mark's right. We've been haunted by it for 30 years. We can't let the next generation suffer the same fate. Sophia looked at the two elderly men, filled with admiration. She knew this was a near-suicidal mission, but for the sake of their descendants and countless others, they had chosen to sacrifice themselves. I'll help you, Sophia said firmly. I'll document your method and monitor your condition constantly while you're unconscious. With Dr. Keller's help, Mark and Rainer located Joaquim's elderly grandson, who had also been affected by the parasite and could enter the dream nest. The three decided to take a specific medication and fall asleep at the same time on the same day, allowing their consciousness to enter the memory nest. Their plan was to use the intense emotions of human memory to impact the parasite's logic, breaking apart its stable structure. November 3, 1978. A normal late autumn afternoon. Mark in his studio, Rainer in his home, and Joaquim's grandson in Sophia's care each took the medication and slowly closed their eyes. Following the plan, Sophia documented their method, then stayed by Joaquim's grandson's side, monitoring his vital signs and brain wave activity closely. The three men's brain waves showed an eerie synchronization, as if their consciousness had merged into one. Sophia could see their brows furrow and relax alternately, their facial expressions constantly changing. Clearly, they were experiencing intense struggles within the dream nest. Time dragged on, each second feeling like an eternity. Sophia's heart was in her throat. She didn't know if they would succeed, or if they would ever wake up. 72 hours later, as the first ray of sunlight streamed through the window, Mark, Rainer, and Joachim's grandson opened their eyes simultaneously. Their gazes were vacant, as if their souls had departed. It took a long time for them to gradually recover. Sophia hurried over, asking anxiously, "How are you? Did it work?" Mark stared at Sophia blankly, then at the paintbrush in his hand, shaking his head. I don't know you. Who am I? Where is this place?" He picked up the paintbrush, trying to draw something, but found he could no longer paint a door. He just said blankly, "I feel like I just walked out of a very large empty room." Rainer and Joachim's grandson experienced the same. They had lost all memories of the war, the silver mailbag, and each other, not even remembering why they were there. Sophia felt a sharp pain in her heart. She knew they had succeeded, but at a heavy cost. Their short-term memory function was permanently damaged, and they had forgotten everything related to the parasite. But there was cause for relief. The door dreams had completely ceased. Rainer's son Carl never sleepwalked or drew doors again, and the memory chaos of other affected individuals gradually subsided. Follow-up investigations showed no further abnormal reports among their descendants. The cosmic parasite had finally been defeated through the sacrifice of memory. Tibet, 2010. The gray-haired Sophia Wolf stood in an ancient monastery, where sunlight filtered through the prayer flags, casting dappled shadows on the ground. Her health had declined significantly, but she had insisted on coming here, to the place where the silver spindle-shaped object had been discovered. On the monastery wall was an ancient mural. It depicted several monks binding a silver spindle with chains woven from scriptures. Surrounding the spindle were countless blurred human figures, as if representing devoured memories. Sophia stood before the mural, silent for a long time. She finally understood. This parasite had been sealed here by monks since ancient times, using the power of scriptures to suppress its hunger and prevent it from harming humans. The monastery's abbot approached Sophia, speaking softly, "Pilgrim, this mural tells the story of the dream eater, comes from the heavens, feeding on human memories. It always finds the hungriest vessels, not hunger for food, but hunger for forgetting. When people wish to forget their pain, to forget the past, it seizes the opportunity to enter." Sophia nodded. The abbot's words suddenly clarified everything. The Nazis in 1938 had wanted to forget the humiliation of World War I, using the spiritual weapon of the Aryan ancestors to cover up their aggressive nature. Their hunger for forgetting had allowed the parasite to take hold. Mark, Rainer, and the others had wanted to forget the trauma of World War II, to escape the shadow of war, and that had allowed the parasite to survive. After leaving the monastery, Sophia returned to her hotel. Night fell, and outside the window, the Himalayas stood majestic under the starry sky, silent as eternity, as if quietly watching everything that had unfolded on Earth. Sophia lay in bed, unable to sleep. Her fingers unconsciously traced something on the window pane. When she came to her senses, a vertical line had appeared on the glass. Sophia jolted awake, quickly wiping the line off with her sleeve. Her heart raced, cold sweat soaking her back. She had thought she had forgotten the door, thought everything was over, but deep in her subconscious, the outline of that door still existed. The starry sky outside remained silent. The wind from the Himalayas, carrying a bitter chill, blew against the hotel window. Sophia knew the parasite had not been completely destroyed. It had merely lost its energy and fallen into hibernation. When humanity once again felt the hunger for forgetting, it might wake up, searching for new vessels. And that silver door would forever exist deep in human consciousness, waiting for the next person who wished to forget the past to push it open.